Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. As my great colleague and friend from Revs Institute, Lauren Goodman, shared.
Okay, everybody.
My name is Arthur Carlson, and I oversee the operations of the new Archives and Research Center at Revs Institute. So we just opened up over the summer, so I'm here to share some of the exciting news, talk about what the center represents and the opportunities we hope it can provide for those here in attendance, joining us online, and anyone else that may be interested in furthering the field of scholarship in historic and significant automobiles. So it's very exciting. So I guess to really back up and understand the momentous achievement, let's start talking initially about the library program at Revs, which many of you are likely familiar with owing to our Revs Digital Library, which has approximately 724,000 photographs online. So originally the library room started as a supporting element of the Miles Collier automobile collection. So most of the material was related to supporting the maintenance, care, and curation of the collection, or understanding the historical significance of the automobiles that he had collected. Eventually, as they added other things like the Briggs Cunningham archives, the archival collections of several photographers, and then other printed material, including now more than 28,000 monographic books and over 100,000 magazines and journals, we have created what we think is one of the most extensive research resources for this field. We've also added art and automobilia and film and audio. Eventually, we filled our space, and as demand for other offerings, including the new gallery that Lauren will be overseeing at Revs Institute, they kicked us out. So they took me and all the archivists, and they packed us up, and they shipped us 20 miles north of Fort Myers, and they stuck us in the Archives and Research Center. So it's actually a brand new facility, and two facilities, technically, because it is actually a building inside of another building. So we built a archival storage facility to Amazon data center specifications. So it's got 0 vertical penetrations, a full Siemens latex roof. It is Category 5 hurricane rated. There is a Fluoro-K fire suppression system, which is a state-of-the-art fire suppression system. And we were so happy with that, we just slapped another building over the top of that. Built to the same specifications. So it is probably the most environmentally secure building in Southwest Florida. Because our major threat is sea level rise and water, we tower above the local population at approximately 30 feet above sea level. So we will be the last place to flood. So when the next hurricane hits, you can see where I'll be hanging out with the dogs. So it is a full compact storage system, 14 feet high in both the standard stacks and the cold storage room, which is where we'll keep nitrate film and other materials that are at risk for vinegar syndrome and things like that. We're going to implement a full digitization lab that can support up to FAGI 4 standards. So for those of you familiar with sort of digitization standards, that is essentially the highest level of professional digitization. So it would allow our materials and resources to be utilized in any sort of new media, virtual augmented reality purposes, 4K, 8K, high definition, whatever you want. So we're really looking at that, trying to be conscious of future planning for our presentations and things like that. We're creating a visiting researcher area. We're about 25 minutes from RSW, which is the region's largest airport between Miami and Orlando. So convenient for those of you coming down. Now, we understand the expectation of 21st century researcher behavior is initially digital born. So that is actually what we're working to do, is that we're working to create access pathways so that we can really open up to a global audience. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And also, if you'll notice, the bottom shot there is actually our workspace. So it's a fully modular workspace. Every single thing in that room can be moved, customized, put together, spread apart, broken together. So it allows us to handle a variety of things, oversized materials, print, art. As a matter of fact, Lauren has commandeered a few of our tables. She's got the prints of noted photographer and fine artist Jesse Alexander spread out all over the place. So that'll be an exhibit debuting in early 2026. So I'm sure you'll hear more from Lauren about that. So we're very excited for those opportunities it represents. But it is a really wonderful space. So we encourage you, if you're ever down in Southwest Florida, please reach out, come down, visit us, or check us out online. So one of the exciting things that we talk about the center representing is it really is a foundational platform on which we can scaffold up our resources. One of the ones that we're most excited about is our AI and machine learning metadata generation tool. So we partnered with the consortium of Metro AI, which is a service of the New York Public Library. And what we are doing is we're implementing a car recognition model, a facial recognition model that uses Insight Face, which is the same technology that powers Apple iOS sort of face unlock. So how the system works, so if we start with the machine learning for the cars, is that essentially we take cars, we upload them with our known metadata, and then we create clusters around them. So for instance, we'll use the example of Porsche. So we can upload Porsches, and then we can upload every single model they make, and then we can make a giant cluster that's Porsche. And then we can take the individual models, 911, 917, whatever we want, 550s. We can make those individual models, and we can make them to that. And then we can do them through generations, phase 1, phase 2, specific races. You can make the clusters as broad or as tightly granular as you want. Once you do that, we feed them into our machine learning system, which goes and it begins to identify those clusters and create relational patterns through the metadata. So if it recognizes that every car in the cluster is a Porsche, it starts to create these relational polygons. So it creates polygons that it overlays over the images to create scaled relationships. What's the measure of the tire? What's the angles of the headlights? What's the angles of the cars and things like that? So it's a pretty interesting thing. And then what it does, you'll see over on the right-hand screen, is it generates a confidence score that these are the images based on similar relational polygons. So we're using 4 different AI models. We're actually using 3. One we run in a grayscale and a monochrome, because we've actually found that the machine learning gets tricked by certain things. The association with red and the mark Ferrari is so strong that any red car gets tagged as a Ferrari. So there are little quirks. So that's why we ran the grayscale programs, to see if by eliminating that RGB element, could we kind of reduce that bias in the AI and machine learning tool. So it's a pretty interesting thing to understand. The other thing that we're finding is that we have a limited sample source. So as we know, with automobile photography and advertising, they take it from, 3 angles? You see the front, you might see the side, you may see the back, depending, right? Same thing with motorsports. The photographers stand in certain areas of the track, the cars are depicted from the same angles, and of course it's motorsports, the cars tend to be heavily modified. So they kind of make bad samples. But as I mentioned earlier, as I keep stressing, we use relational polygons. Relational polygons scale. We happen to have over 100,000 scale model cars. So one of the interesting things that we're now doing is we're starting to 3D image all of our scale model cars to use them as a controlled variable group to better train the AI machine learning element. What we will do is once the machine learning reaches a confidence score of 90% on images, we deploy it to retroactively apply enhanced metadata to the more than 725,000 images we have on our public display and the 1.6 million awaiting full-scale digitization. So what that will do is enhance access and discovery and increase use of our materials and create a better resource for our entire industry and field. Similar to the car recognition model, we're actually employing the same technology that I mentioned Apple uses to better recognize faces, humans, characters, and things like that depicted in the images. I was sharing the example last night that we have an image in our collection, and it says Laguna Seca. All right, cool. It says Laguna Seca, it's got a year. It's not a car in the image, it's a picture of Paul Newman. But nowhere does his name, nowhere does that metadata index. So unless you stumbled across that picture of Paul Newman, you'd never find it. But the AI found it for me. Because we ran Paul Newman's face through the Insight thing, I sent it into the sample store and I said, find me anyone that looks like him. And it brought back a lot. So this is actually an example of how it works. So it overlays a box over the search. So that's when we did it for Ricardo Rodriguez. I said, find me everything you can of him. And you'll see over on the right-hand side that this is actually, I cropped out a little bit of it, but you actually notice it's got 2 relevance confidence scores. The top one is the face. It thinks with about approximately 85% confidence score that image is Ricardo Rodriguez. You'll notice the relevance score, that's related to other metadata. The relevance score is lower than the confidence score because we had a lack of relevant metadata. So because we didn't apply a lot of metadata to the field, it can't ascertain if that's actually him. Funny enough, the thing's so good, it picks up his brother Pedro sometimes. So we are we're actually farther ahead with training the image learning model than the car recognition model, mostly owing to the limitations I mentioned. Plus, it's a sample size issue, is that if you think of every car made, every car that's raced over the last 140 years, it's really just a scale issue. So what we're finding is that reducing the sample size, limiting the scope of the project is achieving deeper results. So we look forward to working more with that. So one of our other things that we're working on is an oral history program. So we've partnered with the Nunn Oral History Center at the University of Kentucky, the sort of the nation's premier oral history academic outfit. And what we're doing with them is we're employing two new technologies they created, Aviary and Whisper. Those are both AI-related tools that enhance access through live language translation, full text transcription, and linked data. So the live language translation is pretty interesting. What it can do is take the interviews that are recorded in the interviewee's native language, in our case primarily English, but it can convert it to most of the major languages supported by Google AI's translation app. So it makes it really accessible. The other thing it does is it runs a full-scale transcription that is time-stamped and that it also creates, if it identifies a linked data agent. So linked data is a concept that really is championed by the Library of Congress, and it's this idea that certain elements and fields have a controlled vocabulary list, controlled elements, and if we can add those controlled elements in, it can talk to other organizations, institutions, or records within our own collections that have that same agent or name authority and tie them together. So for instance, this is actually, ours aren't uploaded yet, so this is one that I stole from the University of Kentucky. That's Steve Zahn talking about bourbon, interestingly enough. But in using that example, so when he mentions like bourbon, and you stop the transcription, you pause the tape, and you pull up the sort of the text, anything that has a linked data will be hyperlinked. So then you can click on that, and it'll basically tie to all of our other resources. So if you're doing something with Ricardo Rodriguez, and you click on that history where somebody talks about his death, it'll pull up anything related to that element. It'll pull up his biography, it'll pull up news stories, it'll pull up images. It'll pull up anything we have, not only in our collections, but anybody tied to our discovery systems. So you can actually see there. Yep, so it's pretty interesting. So what we hope to do with the oral history collection, is to really go out over the next year and to kind of try to identify folks, partners, that can help us identify, as we mentioned, that tacit knowledge, that at-risk data, that at-risk material. Yesterday, they let me ride around Bill Green, which was so interesting, and we were stopping just, all through the old road course pathway, and he was just saying things like, oh, you see that green ball up in the tree there? And it's just all, and who else but him is really gonna know that? So who else but him is going to understand that knowledge, those things that really talk about the history, the culture, those strong experiences that tie us together, where else can we record that? So what we hope to do by announcing basically the program here to this audience today is to have each of you kind of engage, help send in suggestions. As Lauren mentioned, I'm completely new to this. Up until last year, I went to college in the fall of 1998 and I didn't leave. So I stayed completely employed in academia for 26 years, and so I come out knowing nothing about this. I have no understanding of who we can go out there and capture. And please understand that it is not simply about most important or well-recognized names. It's at-risk knowledge. So particularly people that represent regional events, local shows, local races, even failed attempts at implementing car culture or supporting it. So please reach out, share your subject, share your things, and these can be as formal as academic, soft conversations. We really just want to create a resource that shares and preserves that knowledge. So I hope that you all can help us with that. Finally, talking about some other exciting things, we're actually resuming our digitization program. Some of you that are frequent users of RDL have probably noticed that sometime during the pandemic that we kind of stopped uploading new images. So we're actually reviving that. So we just sent out the André van Bever collection, who is the noted Belgian photographer. So we'll have over 100,000 new images coming online soon. Following that, we'll send out Jesse Alexander and some of the other collections and things like that. So we're very excited about that. We've begun the migration to integrated online collection guides. So for those of you that have been using some of our archival collections, those old PDFs, I got rid of them all. So now we have archive space implemented online collection guides. So what you would normally find at a traditional academic institution, that same resource, that same value, and again, opening it up to the public. That is the great thing, is we're trying to remove any barriers to access to use our materials that we can identify and eliminate. Another thing is we just required a couple of new collections, so we're working to get those online. The most recent collection that we obtained was the Strother-McMinn collection. So we picked that up at auction a few months ago. Strother-McMinn is widely regarded as the most influential and important American automotive designer. So it's a really interesting collection. As we've kind of gone through it, there's concept cars, there's correspondence, and more than anything, it reveals the vast alumni network of his students that have become major executives, major influencers, and entrepreneurs in the field of automotive. So it's a really interesting collection. As I mentioned, the Jesse Alexander collection, the fine art prints will go on display. We'll also add the other collections up to our materials as well. Jack Bullard, which is a really interesting collection. For more than 40 years, Jack Bullard responded to car accidents. He was a tow truck operator, so it's a really interesting thing. We think material scientists, vehicle safety studies, really just trying to open up new and exciting things. We're actually expanding our digital library. So right now, the Revs digital library is primarily photographs. So we're looking to add manuscript collections, digitized on material that has out of copyright. So some of those early journals, some of those things like that. Really, like I said, just trying to enhance access to our resources. And then finally, and this is probably most exciting, we're actually working to create basically a consortium of anyone that is interested in kind of helping create standards of discovery, standards of digitization, linked data resources, and things like that. So that's very exciting. We'll actually incorporate that. The articles of incorporation were just drawn up by our lawyer. So it'll actually be a 501c6 incorporated in the state of Florida, which is essentially a chamber of commerce. What we hope to do is create a shared discovery catalog and a shared digital repository. So the idea being that each individual institution that joins the consortium can keep their individual identities, can keep all their processes, but upload their materials into a shared discovery layer. As we mentioned earlier, the 21st century researcher behavior does not want to go to 30 places to look for information. They want to go to one source. It's the Googleification of American discovery. All right, it's that one source concept, and it's something that you find increasingly in academia. It's one source, even if you look at databases now, databases don't get searched individually, they get searched through crawlers. So we really want to implement that same idea, is that if you can go to the consortium website, that you can search the collections of every one of our members. So we hope, for those of you that might be interested, right now there's no obligations, expressions of interest. We've got about 25 organizations across the United States and 2 now in Western Europe, which is really exciting, that are interested in following along. So if that's something that you or your organization might be interested in at least following along with, please see me or Lauren, and we'll make sure that we get added to the listserv. So it's really exciting. As I mentioned, we're incorporating the state of Florida as the group for archival research and global exchange, which spells out garage. I thought of that all myself, so you're welcome for my contributions to automotive history already. So that's a really exciting thing, but that's something that we really want to talk to folks about and to really share and elevate the field. So that's something I think that's really exciting and something that I hope that we can work with each of you. And as I mentioned, this is something that we see as building a resource. So it's something open to conversation. In no way do I want to drive what happens with this thing. What I really want to do is understand what are the research needs of our audience, what are the research needs of, what can we do to expand our offerings, to really, so many of you here have already said, what can we do to increase support for scholarship in this field? And so I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to sort of soft launch that program. So really, like I said, really excited to talk about that, to share that, to build networked interest and things like that. So very, very exciting stuff. So as I mentioned, I thought that this would be more opportunities for free exchange. So I left a little extra time for Q&A compared to some of the other sessions, because I'm sure you have a lot of questions, and I thought that seeing as we couldn't give a live demo, that I might have the opportunity to explain in more detail for any questions that you might have. So Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Thank you. What I'm really hearing is that you're making my life easier. That's what I'm hearing, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
Well, that's exactly what we're here to do. I am not an expert in this field, but if I understand what is the information needs that the field requires, we can build those systems in conjunction with our partners, collaborators, friends, and supporters across the world.
So I think now we're open up for a Q&A. If you have questions about Arthur, if you have questions about tiny little French sculptures that sit on cars, we're both here. I'm not supposed to stand too close to you.
I know. So, Lauren's one of my favorite people in the world, but we're just avoiding each other for interference feedback.
Yeah.
So
Question for Arthur.
Yes.
If someone has historical documents to donate, how would you decide where to send it? You have the AACA, the SAH, and the Revs Institute. Are you looking for specific types of documents?
Well, I think a lot of that depends on the donor. In a lot of cases, donors really have a wish list. There's usually a place that either is their home tract, their home region, maybe an association that they have a stronger affiliation with than others, and they may have a natural place in mind. Now, what we aim to do with that consortium is to make sure that if you come to any one of us, that we understand what are the collecting specialties, what are sort of the talent support of each of the organizations in our field to help donors find the best home. We don't view this as a competition amongst organizations in any way. What we see this as is a way to really build in that collegiality that you see in like academic consortiums, academic conferences, and things like that, where they help you understand this is super great, this definitely needs to be preserved, but hey, maybe you should go see my friend Joe at Watkins Glen because they have all the SCCA stuff and this is more closely aligned with that. And really, it depends on the capacity. If they're out of room, what do we find? So I think it's really just trying to foster better communication amongst our institutions and organizations. And then the other advantage I see, and this is probably leaning a little over my skis, is one of the reasons that they plucked me down to Revs is I used to sit on the Eastern Academic Scholars Trust Consortium, which that is an organization of academic institutions from the University of Maine down to the University of Florida and all up and down the Mid-Atlantic. And what it was they were the first ones to get into the idea of special collections and archival research sharing. So how can you share these things that traditionally have been so guarded and so maintained that you had to ask permission, then get access to look at them, and then while you're looking at them, somebody was looking at you looking at them. So really, how can we dispel those barriers and create, like I said, better agreement, better thing? But that's a great question and one that I'm glad that somebody asked, because I think that's an important point to make, is that it's all about building collaboration.
Thank you for that. I'm very fortunate that I live close to the Revs, and I've used it many times, and it's been really important in my work. So just a couple of very quick questions. Number one, are you now open for research? Is the facility open?
Yes, so we are by appointment only, but if you want to reach out to, as I mentioned, library at revsinstitute.org, we can support research things and things like that. You'll have to excuse our mess. Like I said, we're still moving in a little bit. We opened in June, so it took about 3 weeks. We managed to, and gosh, serendipitously, we moved during 3 weeks in the middle of hurricane season in Florida and didn't get rained on once. Right. So we were just smart and avoided the daily 2:30, 3 p.m., 15-minute deluge.
And so, secondly, my institution, we used to have interns working there before the pandemic. So are you going to start that up again? Or?
I'm glad that you asked that as well. So one of the main tasks I was engaged with by Mr. Collier was re-engaging the academy. So I've actually been in consultation with Florida Gulf Coast University and Florida Southwest College. So we'll actually have service learning students from Florida Gulf Coast University that'll begin working with us in the spring. So they'll be with us for about 80 hours each working on basically their pick of projects. Florida Southwest College, we're also hoping to implement the same thing. They have a more formal internship program, so I'll have a few of those interns. And excitingly, we're also hosting a library fellow. So we'll have one of the archivists in training from Florida Southwest College that'll be embedded with us for 20 hours a week for about 8 weeks to kind of help learn digital preservation and things like that. At my prior institutions, I used to host library science and information graduate students from the University of Rhode Island, Simmons University, Florida State. So we're actually in talks with those individuals. We actually have a graduate student from Simmons that's an intern now. We had a student intern from McPherson College in Kansas over the summer. And I'm trying to convince him to move back to Florida when he graduates and work for us. So that is actually, engaging the academy is actually one of the literally, it says that on Mr. Collier's vision board. That is something that we are tasked with doing specifically.
I think Paul wants to know if his people at Ave Maria could come down
Yes.
and maybe do a little.
Absolutely, absolutely. If, like I said, we just really started reaching out to those things in the last 6 weeks. So let me talk. We'd love to have them. I mean, what our founder sees it as important that Revs Institute is not something that supports just the automotive community, but raises educational opportunities for Southwest Florida.
And one last question. Are you going to open the full Joel Finn archive? I know you have a lot of stuff.
That's
on there.
actually on the list for 26 processing. So I mentioned we have a graduate student from Simmons University, which is a major library and information science school in Boston. So we're actually moving her to full-time. So we're actually keeping her full-time. And in 26, as soon as she gets done on the Pete Byro collection, Joel Finn's up next. Thank you.
All right, Arthur, I'm probably one of the few people who actually understood what you talked about. I'm a models and simulation person. That's been my background as well, a historian of technology. I'm really excited about this. I think a lot of people here, this went right over their heads, but this is where those who behind us, as old folks, this is what's going to make what we have strived for. I know Mark, and I can go around the room, Paul, all of us who have been laboring in the vineyards to make motorsport history relevant. This colloquium, which will, I think, develop, Allison is another one I'm looking at. This is going to open doors.
We believe so.
I really think so. So Scott George said something to me years and years ago that he had all kinds of plans and things going on. And I've talked with a number of people, and I love Revs, just like I like the Research Center. But this is a step forward, and anything that I think those of us in the room can do something to support, I think we're on board.
That's exactly what we hope to hear. And I think that you make a very great point. Everything we're doing is building upon, as everyone has made a point, this has not been a traditional academic field. So it's been one that's been cared for by fans, collectors, enthusiasts, hobbyists, people that have a real love for it. And that's probably what I've noticed more than anything, making the transition from academia over into this field, is the enthusiasm, I feel, just how excited everyone gets about this stuff. And, and I think that passion, if we can harness that passion and really just implement these tools and resources that already exist in other fields and put them onto ours, I think we could just open up so many opportunities to really elevate everything. So,
Lauren, Arthur, thank you very much. Even though the Research Center and Revs are separated physically by, 1,200-1,500 miles, I've always thought we had a bit of a spiritual connection with you folks. And I think with Margaret's recent visit down there, I'm hoping it becomes more than that. But you folks are at the forefront of all of this, and as you can tell, we're all very excited about it. So thank you very much for coming up here and doing the presentation. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.